There are people who have spent their lives shrinking in quiet rooms, as if the world's gaze might crush them if it lingered too long. They speak softly, laugh lightly, and sometimes wonder if their absence would even be noticed. This is not loneliness, not entirely. It's the subtle ache of being unseen, of learning that attention and care often flow to others while they remain peripheral. It's a life threaded with moments of being overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten. Over time, this feeling settles into the body, in the posture, in the hesitant glance before speaking. It shapes the way one inhabits space, how one moves through life, always aware, always cautious, and always carrying the quiet weight of seeming unimportant. There are moments so small they almost escape notice. A hand not returned in greeting, a voice unheard in a crowded room, a question left unanswered. For some, these moments are fleeting, passing through the margins of awareness. For others, they accumulate like faint echoes, a pattern that threads itself through childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. It begins quietly, before words exist to name it, a subtle knowing that their presence is optional, that their feelings are dispensable, that their being, in some unspoken way, does not command attention. In the earliest years, it might appear in the way a parent's gaze flickers elsewhere, or the hurried dismissal of a child's story. The laughter of peers might pass over them, inclusive of everyone but them. Teachers may notice everything but their questions. These moments are not dramatic. They do not leave scars immediately, but they leave impressions, soft and persistent. They plant the idea that perhaps their thoughts, emotions, and desires are less worthy than those of others. Recognition of one's own invisibility often arrives as a slow dawning. It is a quiet awareness, felt more in the body than articulated in language. A slump in the shoulders, a hesitation before speaking, a glance toward the floor when entering a room. The body becomes an archive of unacknowledged experiences. And yet, the mind tries to make sense of it. It asks, why am I overlooked? Is it something about me, or is it the world that simply passes too quickly? These reflections, tender and tentative, are the first chapter of a lifelong story. They emerge not with anger or defiance, but with a soft, almost apologetic curiosity. If I exist, does it matter? And in this question lies both the ache and the clarity of being unseen. For some, the answer seems obvious. Their life matters only as much as the attention it receives. And so, a pattern begins to form. In public spaces, the unnoticed becomes skilled in blending into the background. They learn to move quietly, to speak softly, to avoid drawing attention. There is a rhythm to it, subtle and unconscious, a way of existing that minimizes the risk of further invisibility. Even when laughter bubbles or joy rises, there is a hesitancy, a brief glance around the room, an internal calculation. Will anyone notice this? Will anyone care? Yet there is also a strange intimacy in this quiet existence. Being unseen teaches patience, empathy, and observation. The unnoticed learn to read rooms with subtlety, to sense moods before they manifest. They watch the gestures and expressions of others, absorbing details that often escape those more celebrated by the world. In this way, invisibility becomes both a burden and a lens, distorting, yes, but also deepening perception. The early recognition of unimportance does not arrive with fanfare. It whispers, it lingers in the silences between words, in the spaces where attention might have been offered. Over time, these silences accumulate into a persistent feeling that their voice, their presence, is negotiable rather than intrinsic. And yet, even within this quiet, a strange resilience forms, a way of moving through life that acknowledges the world's indifference without allowing it to extinguish the self entirely. In this recognition, there is no shame, though the world may impose it. There is simply awareness, a fact observed, cataloged, and carried forward. Some will carry it as a shadow, dimming their natural brightness. Others will carry it as a lens, seeing life with sensitivity and care. Either way, the quiet recognition of unimportance is the first step in understanding the complex landscape of being unseen. It is the delicate acknowledgement that the world does not always notice, and yet life continues, persistent, beneath the radar of attention. It is here, in this subtle awareness, that the journey begins, not with grand realizations, but with the gentle, enduring truth that being unimportant is a feeling experienced by many, a truth that shapes posture, glances, and whispers. And though it is quiet, it is real, and it is worth noticing. The feeling of being unimportant rarely begins in adulthood. It takes root long before conscious thought can name it, in the tender, malleable landscape of childhood. In these early years, every glance, every tone, every gesture carries meaning. A parent who rushes past a child's question, a teacher who calls on everyone else first, a sibling whose laughter drowns out another's story. These moments, seemingly minor, plant seeds. They whisper a quiet lesson. Your presence is optional. And when such whispers are repeated over weeks, months, and years, they accumulate into a conviction that invisibility is one's natural state. Family dynamics play a silent but powerful role. In households where attention is scarce, conditional, or unevenly distributed, children learn to read the environment before they even understand words. Some may notice that affection comes only when they succeed, or that warmth is reserved for others. Others might observe that emotional expression is met with impatience, dismissal, or frustration. The message, implicit but profound, is that feelings and presence must compete for recognition, and often they fall short. Social hierarchies outside the home compound this understanding. Schoolyards, playgrounds, and peer groups mirror the dynamics of family life, amplifying early impressions. The child who is overlooked in group games, whose ideas are interrupted, or whose accomplishments are quietly bypassed, begins to internalize a pattern. Being unnoticed is the default. In these spaces, attention is currency, and those who fail to earn it, even unintentionally, come to see themselves as peripheral. Cultural and societal norms add another layer. Some communities celebrate extroversion, achievement, or charisma, leaving quieter or less assertive personalities on the margins. For these children, the world seems designed for others, those whose presence is larger, louder, or more immediately gratifying. They absorb the subtle suggestion that the value of one's existence is measured by visibility, recognition, and performance. When they do not meet these benchmarks, the lesson is clear. Your life, your voice, yourself is less important. Over time, these small experiences converge into a mental narrative. The child does not consciously decide to feel unimportant. Rather, the mind constructs a story to explain the repeated pattern of being overlooked. It is a quiet, adaptive process, one meant to protect. By predicting the world's response, by shrinking or moderating behavior, the child minimizes disappointment and the sting of neglect. But in doing so, a shadow forms, a persistent belief that presence itself is negotiable, that significance must be earned, and that invisibility is safer than exposure. These origins are rarely dramatic or traumatic. There may be no single moment of profound rejection. Often the lessons are embedded in the mundane, the unreturned smile, the interrupted sentence, the forgotten birthday. Yet their impact is cumulative. Each overlooked moment layers onto the last, until invisibility feels like a natural state of being rather than an experience imposed by others. In understanding the roots of feeling unimportant, one begins to see the subtle machinery of human relationships. The mind, sensitive and impressionable, absorbs the cues it is given, internalizing patterns of attention and neglect. Early experiences are not destiny, yet they leave traces, shaping self-perception and interpersonal expectations. The child who grows up in these conditions learns both how to navigate a world that does not always see them and how to survive the quiet ache of being peripheral. It is in tracing these origins that one begins to understand the depth of the experience. Feeling unimportant is not simply a fleeting emotion, it is a learned rhythm, a habitual response to a world that has repeatedly overlooked the self. Awareness of these origins does not erase the past, but it illuminates it, providing a map of how early moments echo across a lifetime. Even as adults, they carry these echoes in posture, in hesitation, in the careful way they approach connection, and in recognizing that this feeling is rooted in experiences that were never theirs to choose. The first threads of compassion for oneself, for one's past, begin to emerge. It is here, in the gentle excavation of origins, that understanding begins, not with judgment, but with quiet acknowledgement. The unimportance felt was never inherent. It was taught, softly, persistently, and invisibly. The experience of feeling unimportant does not remain solely in memory. It seeps into the mind itself, shaping thought, perception, and self-image. Every overlooked glance, every unanswered question leaves traces on the neural architecture, quiet but persistent. Psychology and neuroscience reveal that repeated patterns of social neglect or invisibility influence attachment, emotional regulation, and even the brain's reward systems. Over time, being unseen ceases to be just an external circumstance. It becomes a mental script, written and rewritten in the corridors of thought. Attachment theory offers one way to understand this. Children who are consistently unnoticed or dismissed may develop anxious or avoidant attachment patterns. They learn to anticipate neglect, to temper their expressions of need, or to avoid seeking connection altogether. Their internal world becomes a delicate balance between longing for recognition and preparing for disappointment. When the mind predicts that attention will be sparse, it begins to regulate expectation. The child, now grown, learns to walk through life quietly, often holding back voice, ideas, and desires, believing these might be irrelevant or unwelcome. Cognitive patterns also reinforce this sense of unimportance. The mind, seeking to make sense of repeated experiences, forms internal narratives. I am less noticeable, less deserving, less worthy. These are not mere self-critical thoughts, they're adaptive predictions. If reality has repeatedly shown them that attention flows elsewhere, the brain assumes the pattern will continue. And because the brain relies on reinforcement, every small moment of being overlooked, however innocuous, strengthens this internal story. It becomes a lens through which all future interactions are filtered. The emotional impact is equally profound. Neurochemically, experiences of neglect or invisibility activate stress pathways. Cortisol levels rise, and subtle physiological tension accumulates over years. This chronic, low-level stress may never manifest as acute trauma, but it shapes the body, posture, and even the cadence of speech. The individual's nervous system carries the memory of being unseen long after conscious recall has faded. There is also a quiet interplay with self-concept. People who feel unimportant often develop a heightened sensitivity to social cues. They read rooms carefully, anticipate rejection, and modulate behavior to avoid further invisibility. Paradoxically, this sensitivity can cultivate empathy and insight, a kind of attunement to the experiences of others. Yet, it also reinforces the belief that their own presence is negotiable, contingent, or secondary. Being unnoticed becomes a habit of perception, an automatic filter through which every interaction is interpreted. In the absence of external acknowledgement, the mind creates its own mirrors. Internal dialogue grows both rich and critical, oscillating between longing for recognition and self-censure. Thought becomes a terrain where invisibility is both observed and enacted. The individual begins to rehearse their own unimportance, anticipating neglect, and sometimes even unconsciously provoking it, not out of desire, but because the pattern has been ingrained as a safe expectation. Scientific studies show that social pain, the experience of being excluded or dismissed, activates neural pathways strikingly similar to physical pain. The ache of invisibility is literal as well as metaphorical. It resides in the body, shaping heartbeat, posture, and the weight one carries through the day. These neurological patterns, reinforced over years, create a feedback loop. The mind expects to be unseen, the body behaves accordingly, and the world often responds in kind. And yet, even within this neurological architecture, there is room for reflection. Awareness of these patterns allows for gentle observation rather than harsh judgment. Understanding that the mind has learned to protect itself, to anticipate neglect, reframes unimportance not as a personal flaw, but as a response, a silent, adaptive story that has been written in neurons and nurtured in repeated experience. In seeing the mind's silent story, one begins to recognize the depth and sophistication of the response. Feeling unimportant is not laziness, passivity, or weakness. It is a living archive of experience, a mental map constructed from the echoes of being overlooked. And within that recognition lies the first glimmer of clarity. The mind has carried the story, but it is not the whole story. Beyond the patterns of neural expectation, beyond the rehearsed silence, there is potential for awareness, reflection, and eventually, quiet transformation. Even when the mind recognizes patterns of invisibility, the heart often rebels in silence. There is a tension, subtle yet persistent, between the longing to be seen and the conditioned expectation that recognition will not come. This inner conflict becomes a quiet undercurrent of experience, shaping choices, conversations, and connections. It is neither dramatic nor violent. It is a slow, almost imperceptible negotiation between desire and caution. The conflict often begins with hesitation. The impulse to speak, to express a thought, or to ask for attention is tempered by years of experience predicting indifference. One hesitates, pauses, perhaps reframes a sentence to make it smaller, softer, less likely to disturb. This resistance is protective. The mind has learned that drawing attention can bring disappointment, that being noticed does not guarantee acceptance, and that boldness can invite rejection. Yet the heart continues to yearn for acknowledgement, creating a subtle push and pull within every interaction. In relationships, this inner tension is particularly pronounced. The individual may crave closeness, yet instinctively retreat when intimacy approaches. They might long for validation, yet doubt their worthiness of it. This internal friction manifests as contradictory behaviors, speaking loudly and retreating quickly, seeking attention and avoiding it, offering care while expecting little in return. Others may perceive this as inconsistency or aloofness, yet beneath it lies a sophisticated negotiation between hope and caution, vulnerability and self-protection. Resistance also arises in the form of internal dialogue. The voice within oscillates between longing and critique, affirmation and doubt. I want to speak, but no one will listen. I deserve to be noticed, yet why would anyone care? These statements are not merely negative thoughts, they are rehearsed reflections, patterns honed over a lifetime of overlooked moments. Each thought reinforces the familiar, creating a feedback loop. Desire for recognition collides with anticipation of neglect, producing restraint, hesitation, and sometimes withdrawal. This internal tension extends to ambition and creativity. Ideas may be withheld, contributions muted, or risks avoided, not from lack of skill or insight, but from a deep-seated belief that visibility is optional. Even success, when achieved, can feel hollow if it does not come with acknowledgement. The person learns to navigate life in quiet increments, measuring risk, calibrating expression, and negotiating their presence to minimize emotional cost. In this way, inner resistance becomes both shield and chain. It protects from hurt while limiting potential for recognition and fulfillment. Conflict is not confined to external spaces. It is embedded in the body and in time itself. A brief hesitation before entering a room, a sigh before speaking, the involuntary tightening of muscles, all are physical manifestations of this negotiation between desire and caution. The heart beats faster with the thought of attention, yet instinct urges restraint. The mind calculates probabilities, the body responds with instinctive preparation. It is a choreography learned over years, subtle yet persistent, rehearsed in silence. And yet, within this struggle, there is quiet intelligence. Resistance is adaptive, a sophisticated response to repeated experiences of neglect. It is neither weakness nor failure. It is the mind and heart working in tandem to navigate a world that has often failed to see them.
Awareness of this tension allows the individual to witness it, not as a flaw, but as a living map of experience, a reflection of resilience and caution intertwined. It is here, in the liminal space between desire and hesitation, that the complexity of unimportance is fully visible. The struggle is invisible to most observers, yet it shapes every interaction, every pause, every glance. The quiet push and pull between yearning to be noticed and the instinct to protect oneself is the inner reality of those who have felt unimportant their whole lives, a tension that, when recognized, reveals both the depth of their pain and the subtle strength that has carried them through it.
Change rarely arrives with fanfare. For those who have carried the quiet ache of unimportance, recognition often begins as a whisper rather than a declaration. It may come in a glance that lingers, a voice that listens, a gesture that affirms presence without condition. These moments are subtle, almost imperceptible, yet they ripple through the psyche, challenging long-held expectations. For the first time, the mind begins to reconsider what it believed immutable, that being unseen was inevitable, that one's presence was negotiable. Turning points are rarely singular events. They emerge as a series of small recognitions woven together by circumstance, timing, and attentiveness. Perhaps a friend remarks on a unique quality long unnoticed, or a colleague acknowledges an insight previously overlooked. Sometimes the recognition comes from strangers, a smile in passing, a note of gratitude, a conversation that allows them to exist fully without pretense. These seemingly ordinary experiences carry extraordinary significance for someone accustomed to invisibility. In this stage, awareness begins to shift. The individual notices that moments of acknowledgement, however fleeting, are possible. The mind, conditioned to anticipate neglect, hesitates, unsure if it is safe to accept. The body responds as well. Shoulders, once tense and cautious, may relax. Voice may rise slightly. The glance that habitually seeks the floor may linger upward, meeting others with curiosity rather than retreat. These small, almost imperceptible changes mark the beginning of an internal recalibration. The subtle turning point also illuminates the complexity of emotion. Recognition brings relief, but also fear. It challenges a narrative that has provided structure and protection for decades. If presence is acknowledged now, how will they respond? How will they trust that visibility will not be temporary, conditional, or fleeting? These questions are not trivial. They are part of the delicate negotiation between the familiar comfort of invisibility and the new possibility of being seen. At this juncture, the individual often begins to experiment quietly. They test the waters of attention, offering more of themselves than before. A voice once hushed may speak up in a conversation. A creative impulse previously held back may be expressed. These gestures are tentative, measured, and cautious, but they are gestures nonetheless. The mind observes, the heart assesses, and slowly the experience of recognition begins to accumulate evidence against the long-standing narrative of unimportance. The subtle turning point is also temporal. It is less about one transformative instant than a gradual unfolding. Patterns begin to shift imperceptibly. The habitual anticipation of neglect softens, the reflexive shrinking recedes, and the mind allows the possibility that acknowledgement can be consistent. Each small encounter, each subtle affirmation strengthens the fragile awareness that visibility need not be exceptional. It can be ordinary, gentle, human. Even the smallest acknowledgement carries meaning beyond the immediate moment. It confirms that the self is not peripheral, that one's thoughts, feelings, and presence can matter without extraordinary effort. The psychological weight that has been carried silently begins to lighten, not suddenly, but gradually through repeated experiences that challenge internalized beliefs. This is the threshold of transformation, the quiet pivot from survival in the shadows to tentative engagement with the light. In recognizing the subtle turning point, one glimpses the power of gentle awareness. Change is not imposed, argued, or forced. It is discovered. It is the accumulation of small gestures, careful attention, and consistent acknowledgement. And in this accumulation, the mind, body, and heart begin to recalibrate.
gently learning that presence can be recognized, valued, and affirmed. Here, the story of invisibility meets the possibility of acknowledgement. The path forward is neither linear nor guaranteed, yet it is marked by moments of quiet courage, moments in which the individual allows themselves to exist fully, to be seen without apology, and to experience the profound, understated transformation that comes with being noticed at last.
Healing is rarely sudden. For those who have carried the persistent ache of feeling unimportant, integration of recognition into the self occurs in quiet increments, like light slowly filling a darkened room. It is not about erasing the past, nor pretending that invisibility never shaped them. Instead, it is about learning to inhabit one's own presence with gentleness, curiosity, and patient attention. Healing begins when the individual allows themselves to acknowledge both the years of unacknowledged existence and the subtle resilience that carried them through. Integration requires awareness of the internalized narratives formed over a lifetime. I am less than, I am peripheral, I am unworthy of attention. These beliefs, once unchallenged, are slowly observed without judgment. The individual begins to notice how these stories have influenced choices, posture, and patterns of thought. In noticing, there is a pause, a space between old reflex and present reality. And in that space, a different response becomes possible. Recognition of self-worth that does not depend solely on external validation. Relationships play a delicate role in this process. External acknowledgement reinforces internal shifts, but it is not the source of healing. Instead, it provides gentle evidence that the world can see, value, and respond to presence. A friend's attentiveness, a partner's listening, or a mentor's genuine appreciation can all serve as mirrors in which the previously unseen self begins to perceive its own value. Repetition of these experiences allows the mind to revise long-standing expectations, replacing habitual invisibility with cautious but growing confidence in being noticed. Healing also emerges through reflective practices. Quiet observation of one's own needs, emotions, and responses cultivates self-compassion. Journaling, meditation, or even simple acknowledgement of feelings becomes a method of validation. The self, once trained to seek recognition externally, learns to turn inward, offering the care, attention, and affirmation that were once withheld or absent. Over time, these practices strengthen the internal architecture of worth, allowing the individual to inhabit life with more openness and less anticipatory fear. The process of integration is neither linear nor complete overnight. There are relapses into old patterns, moments of doubt, hesitation, or retreat. The mind, trained over decades to anticipate invisibility, sometimes reverts to familiar expectations. Yet each return to self-awareness, each gentle reflection, reinforces the possibility of presence. The nervous system, once tuned to the subtle threat of being overlooked, slowly learns that acknowledgement and attention can coexist with safety. In this recalibration, the body, mind, and heart align toward a new rhythm, one that allows recognition to be accepted without fear or self-negation. Healing also involves reframing the past. Childhood experiences, once sources of repeated pain, can be observed with compassion and understanding. The individual sees that the lack of acknowledgement was rarely personal, often circumstantial. The unimportant self was not inherently flawed. It was responding adaptively to environments that did not offer consistent affirmation. In this light, the past becomes a teacher rather than a jailer, providing insight into survival, resilience, and sensitivity. Ultimately, integration is about reclaiming presence. It is the ability to exist fully, without constant calculation of worth or visibility. It is the capacity to speak, to move, to express creativity and desire, while trusting that these acts matter. Healing allows the quiet ache of unimportance to coexist with a growing sense of intrinsic value, forming a balance between memory and present experience, between cautious expectation and gentle trust. In the process of healing and integration, the individual discovers something profound. Recognition is not solely external, nor is it granted once and for all. It is cultivated, accumulated, and reflected in both self and relationships. The journey transforms invisibility into awareness, expectation into understanding, and quiet endurance into a subtle, enduring presence, a presence that no longer requires permission to exist. There is a quiet beauty in the life of someone who has long felt unimportant. It is not the beauty of grand gestures or loud accolades, but of subtle presence, patient observation, and resilience etched into every movement. They have learned to exist with care, to notice without claiming, to feel without demanding. Their lives carry the texture of silence and attentiveness, a rhythm often invisible to the world but deeply profound in its own right. In these lives, invisibility has been both teacher and companion. It has taught caution, reflection, and empathy. It has shown how to read the smallest cues, to witness without interrupting, to listen without insisting. And yet, despite decades of quiet endurance, the desire to matter persists, soft and persistent, a tender pulse beneath careful behavior. Recognition, when it comes, is not just relief, it is revelation. It illuminates the self, the life, the presence that has existed all along, patiently waiting for acknowledgement. The poetic closure of the story is not in dramatic transformation, but in subtle awakening. It is found in the first time someone truly sees them and holds that sight without judgment or distraction. It is in the small moments of shared attention, where laughter is returned, questions are answered, and presence is not negotiable. It is in the self's willingness to receive recognition, however tentative, and to allow it to reshape long-held beliefs. These moments are tender, cumulative, and enduring, like sunlight slowly penetrating the corners of a dark room. There is a rhythm to the unimportant self learning to be known. The body, once tense with anticipation of neglect, loosens. The voice, once measured and cautious, carries its natural tone. The gaze, once shy and downward, lifts to meet the world, curious rather than defensive. And in these shifts, subtle yet profound, the individual discovers that being seen does not require performance, dramatics, or extraordinary deeds. Presence itself is sufficient. In reflecting on invisibility, one sees the paradox of life. What is unseen can shape the deepest understanding of existence. The quiet observer, the one long accustomed to shadows, often develops insight unavailable to those bathed in constant attention. Sensitivity, attunement, and careful perception become strengths born of absence. The world may not always notice, yet the depth of awareness, the capacity for empathy, and the richness of internal life speak volumes about the resilience and subtle brilliance of the human spirit. Poetic closure lies in gentle reconciliation with the past, with the body, with the self. The years of feeling unimportant are acknowledged without self-reproach. The quiet ache is recognized as part of a complex tapestry, one that has shaped perception, empathy, and survival. In this reconciliation, there is release, not of memory, but of its hold, a soft exhalation that allows the individual to exist in the present with integrity and grace. The unspoken pain of invisibility does not disappear entirely, nor should it. It is woven into the texture of a life lived deeply, and in its presence lies a quiet strength. It teaches patience, humility, and attentiveness. It guides perception and fosters understanding. And when recognized, it becomes a subtle source of wisdom, illuminating how profoundly the human heart can endure, observe, and eventually accept its own importance. To witness this is to witness the gentle awakening of a life long accustomed to being overlooked. It is the recognition that being seen is not an event, but a process, a rhythm of existence that begins first within and gradually extends outward. There is quiet triumph in this realization, a tender celebration of presence, a meditation on value, and an acknowledgement that no life, however shadowed, is without significance. And so the story closes softly, leaving the observer with an enduring image, the individual once unseen, now moving through life with measured awareness, gentle courage, and a newfound trust that their presence matters, simply because it is.